Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So here's a deck profile for you guys today. This time it's on Sacred Beast now. The new structure deck just came out, and I decided to put together a budget build for you guys. So this is only using cards within the structure deck. And I gotta say, Sacred Beast actually have a lot of hidden potential within them. Honestly, I can see this as a viable rogue option because some of the combos that this deck can actually produce are pretty absurd. And considering that this deck could easily OTK your opponent, yeah, there's just so much that this deck can really do if you play correctly. And I figure, until I'll probably upgrade this deck a little later. I gotta consider all my options first. But first, I just wanted to bring you guys mainly a build directly from the structure deck itself and put together a competitive deck for you guys. So let's go and get started. All right, so the main deck is 40 cards, of course, starting off with the new Raviel, Lord of Phantasm, Shimmering Scraper. So this card is actually pretty good. You can special summon this card by tributing any 3 monsters, so like an Egyptian god card. But it also acts as a hand trap. So quick effect, you can discard this card, target 1 original Raviel, Lord of Phantasms, and its attack points become double. Also can attack each of your opponent's monsters once each. So that's actually pretty good. So you basically turn the original Raviel into an 8k beast stick, and also has a pretty good graveyard effect where you can tribute a monster and add this card from your grave back into your hand. So it's a good way just to recur it and just kind of like keep at it. And honestly, I could definitely see this synergizing with Lair of Darkness as well. So that's what I'm also trying to experiment with. So yeah. So moving on to the original Sacred Beast. 2 copies of Raviel. You have to summon it by tributing 3 monsters, or 3 fiend monsters. I'm sorry. And each time your opponent normal summons a monster, you special summon a token. There are going to be level 1 dark monsters, fiends, both with attack and defense points of 1,000. And they cannot declare an attack, but you don't use it for that anyway. You use it just to tribute them, so you can just give Raviel an additional 1,000 attack points. But you can also link off with them too, so it almost doesn't matter. But Raviel is basically your main beat stick, and the fact that he's also a token generator, it comes in clutch. 2 Haman, you summon it by tributing 3 face-up continuous spells, which isn't typically hard to do in this deck at all anyway. But if this card destroys a opponent's monster by battle, you inflict 1,000 points of damage. And if this card is in face-up defense mode, your opponent cannot target monsters for attacks except Haman. So really great. Next, 2 copies of Uriah. So this is probably my favorite of the original Sacred Beast, just because he looks like Slifer. But you special summon it by tributing 3 face-up trap cards you control, and they don't have to be continuous traps. They just need to be face-up traps. This card gains attack points, or 1,000 attack points for each continuous trap in your graveyard, though, so that is restricting to continuous traps. You can target 1 set spell or trap your opponent controls. To destroy that target, neither player can activate spell or trap effects, or cards in general, in response, so definitely an amazing card. For the last of my boss monsters, I'm actually running 2 copies of Radion. Considering that he's a big monster, but he can also be easily beaten over with, cards like Uriah and Haman, even Raviel anyway. It's really good for spot removal too. And that's pretty much it for those big guys. Now moving on to the smaller monsters. Starting off with 3 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. This is probably one of your main openers. When this card is normal summon, you can add a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel, or 1 card that lists their names in their text from your deck to your hand, except of course this card. And also what's really cool about this card is that you can actually get an additional normal summon of another monster with 0 attack and 0 defense. So this card definitely helps you get your combos going. Next, 3 Chaos Summoning Beast. So you can tribute this card just to special summon one of your Sacred Beasts from your hand, ignoring the summoning condition. So it's really good just to, like I say, just get things started. And it also has a really good graveyard effect where we can search out the field spell Fallen Paradise, so that's also really nice. So definitely want to run this at 3. Next, 3 Dark Summoning Beast. So this basically does the exact same thing as Chaos. The only difference is that this thing can special summon the Sacred Beast from your hand or your deck from ignoring the summoning conditions. Also, monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of the turn, but that's fine considering sometimes you want to go first anyway, just to set up a board. It almost doesn't matter. So like honestly, I think 3 of it's just fine. Also, another cool thing about this card is that you can also banish this from your grave, and you can recur your you can add an additional Uriah, Haman, or Raviel directly from your deck to your hand. So not exactly recurring, but you're basically searching. So it also has a really good search effect. And that's pretty much it for this part. I'm not running the Chaos Core. It's alright, but it's not that great, honestly. And to be honest, it just felt a little too slow. For the last of my monsters, I'm running 2 copies of Farfa. It's like, you might not see this in a lot of other builds, but I'm running it just because you can easily pitch this to the grave and just get a free spot removal that way too. So that's the only reason why I'm running the 1 Farfa, or not the 1, but the 2 Farfa. All right, so for spells, I'm running 3 copies of Desires. You know, you definitely want the draw power. Next up, 3 copies of Opening of the Spirit Gate. So this also has a search effect where you can search out one of your Sacred Beasts or a card or a monster that lists their names in their text. So you can search out the smaller monsters this way too. And this also acts as a pretty good Monster Reborn effect where you can special summon a Fiend monster with 0 attack or defense from your graveyard. And once per turn, if you control a level 10 monster, and again, it's just a level 10 monster, it doesn't have to be specifically for the Sacred Beast, you can add a continuous spell from your grave back to your hand. So this is one of your main key pieces of recursion right here. 2 Fallen Paradise. For those who don't know what this does, is that as long as this card is out, your opponent cannot target any of your Sacred Beast monster, including the Fusion monster, in your main monster zones with card effects, and they can't be destroyed by card effects. Also, if you control any one of the following, Uriah, Raviel, or Haman, or even Armityle, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, you can draw 2 cards. So it's really good for draw power as well. Next, 2 copies of Cerulean Skyfire. So this card is pretty interesting. This is one of the new spell support cards. So to special summon Haman, Lord of Striking Thunder, using its own procedure. So meaning like the cards usually have to be face up. You can now, this card enables you to tribute the face down spells, and it doesn't have to be just continuous spells anymore. They could just be regular spells as long as they're face down. Once per turn, while you control an attack position Haman, you can negate any spell or trap activation that your opponent tries to do, then change Haman into defense mode. If a face-up Uriah, Haman, or Raviel is sent to the graveyard, or just leaves the field in general, you take no battle damage this turn. Or just no damage, I'm sorry. So, like, that's actually pretty nice. So, like, the fact that this card essentially gives you protection, and it's a negation, that's really nuts. Like, it just makes things a lot easier. Next is probably my favorite card of the entire structure deck. 2 copies of Dimension Fusion Destruction. So here's what this card does. It's basically a miracle fusion for Sacred Beast. You can banish the following materials from your hand, field, or grave to special summon any Phantasm fusion monster from your extra deck, ignoring the summoning conditions. Also, you will never take damage from involving that monster as long as you summon it through this card's effect. So, like, for example, if you summon Armityle using this card, even though its attack points become 10,000 during your turn only, and becomes 0 again on your opponent's turn, you will never take damage because you summoned it through this card's effect. So that's actually really insane, and honestly, I'm so happy they made that card. And plus, it makes it a lot easier to summon, and definitely much more playable. All right, so the last of my spells is 1 for 1, so this is pretty standard. Considering it's a 1 of anyway, I figured, you know what, why not? All right, so now we're moving on to traps. So this deck does actually run quite a few of them, but not too many. Starting off with 3 copies of Awakening of the Sacred Beast. So this card does 1 of 3 things, depending on what you control. If you control any of the following Sacred Beasts of different names, for 1 each time your opponent normal or special summon monster, you gain life points equal to the attack of that monster. If you have 2, if you control 2 of them, you can negate the activated effects of all of your opponent's monsters. So yeah, it gets really good. And if you have 3, any monster that's sent to the opponent's graveyard is banished instead. Once per turn, if you control a level 10 monster, you can add back a continuous trap from your grave back to your hand. So it's a good way just to recur. But the crazy thing is that this card acts as a skill drain and as a macrocosmo on your opponent's side of the field only. So, like, again, if you manage to control 1 of each, and if you have all 3 of them out on board, your opponent's going to be stuck with this card, because this card is essentially a Fligate plus a recursion. So that's really nuts. Next, 2 Hyperblaze. So this card is more specific to Uriah, much like the continuous spell Cerulean Skyfire is to Haman. Anytime you special summon Uriah, you can use face-down traps as well instead of just face-up ones. Once per battle, when an attack is declared involving Uriah, you can send 1 trap from your hand or your deck to the graveyard. Its attack and defense become the number of face-up traps you currently control. And in the grave, times 1,000. So you essentially make Uriah much bigger than he already is going to be. And again, just letting you know, this is only going to be for the rest of this turn, though. So just bear that in mind. So you can basically make Uriah, like, godly. Once per turn, you can discard one card, add to your hand, or special summon a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your graveyard, ignoring the summoning condition. So that's also pretty nice. Alright, so the last of my traps, I'm running 3 Dark Factory of more production. So this is basically for a Foolish Burial slash draw power, but of course it doesn't send from deck to the grave, it sends from hand or field, unfortunately, but it's still pretty good just to get rid of dead cards. And plus, this is actually one of the reasons why I'm running Farfa in the first place, because if I see it and I have this, I can just send Farfa, get a draw power, and also get to banish with Farfa's effect. I mean, what can you go, there's nothing to go wrong with that, right? So, and plus eventually you could just tribute it off for Uriah anyway. Alright, extra deck. Since there's only 2 fusion monsters available in this structure deck, of course you're going to be running 3 of the Armital, the Chaos Phantasm, and 3 copies of Phantasm Emperor Trilojig. I guess that's how you pronounce it. But I already explained what Armital does when I was explaining it. Its attack points become 10,000 during your turn only, but it becomes 0 again during your opponent's turn. But this card, if this card is special summoned, or if another monster is special summoned from your grave to your field while you control this monster, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its original attack point. So it's good for burn damage, and that's pretty much it. Alright, side deck, and again, this is why I like structured decks, because sometimes there is enough cards just to make a side deck for it. I'm running 3 Chaos Hunter, you know, just to prevent your opponent from banishing cards. Didn't really want to main deck this, but you could if you wanted to. Danger Chupacabra. 3 Swords of Concealing Light. For back row heavy decks, you know, Mystical Space Typhoon. And just a little funny gimmick card, 3 copies of Mistake, which honestly is not a bad reprint for this set, or for this structure deck at all. So honestly, Mistake is pretty good. Because yeah, you basically lock yourself out from searching cards, but you could always tribute this off for your Uriah anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So honestly, I thought it was going to conflict too much, but it works. It works. But yeah, anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again next time.